Good evening, everybody, and welcome into this edition of the Prospect Show on ASTV Productions. I'm your host, Graham Forsyth, and in tonight's edition of the Prospect Show, it's going to be a semi-live show. What I mean by that is we're going to be doing one interview live, and then we're going to be doing the second interview, showing it pre-recorded. And for those of you that are joining us on this edition of the Prospect Show tonight, we thank you for tuning in. It's really nice out here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. It's feeling like summer. Gotta love it. It would just be nice to get out by the water, but that'll come. That'll come. And yeah, for those of you that have been watching the Winnipeg Jets game, I'm sure that you guys are catching the end of that one. Our boys are down right now, 1-0 from the last time I checked, but hopefully we're able to tie it up and send that game to OT. But enough of the NHL talk, enough of me talk about the weather. Let's get into who this first guest is. His name is Kristen Humphries. He was number 24 for the Bishop Kearney Selects 14U AAA team this season. He actually plays center. He's from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, born on February 4th, 2006. I'm going to have a chance to ask Kristen in tonight's edition of the show about his season playing with the Selects, his time before playing with the Selects, where he ended up playing, and his time growing up in Pittsburgh. That's all coming up tonight on this first interview in tonight's edition of the Prospect Show with number 24 of the Bishop Kearney Selects 14U AAA team. Kristen Humphries here on this edition of the Prospect Show on ASTV Productions. Wow! Joining me now on this edition of the Prospect Show is Kristen Humphries. Kristen, thank you so much for coming on this Friday night. I know that it's late where you are since you're in the Eastern time zone, so you're an hour later than where I am right now in terms of time. But thank you so much for joining me on the show tonight, man. It's great to have you on. How are you doing? How have you been keeping yourself busy since the hockey season ended for you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. But I've been keeping myself really busy. Been playing a lot of golf lately, which has been kind of relaxing. Been after a long hockey season since it got pushed back a month because of COVID. But we came short in nationals, which definitely sucks. But that we still have another year next year, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's always nice to go out and go on the courses, hit some balls, play some golf. I know that so many hockey players I have here on the show are big golfers. But yeah, it's going to be awesome to get into just what type of run you guys were able to go on this season as a team, which was pretty amazing. You guys made it all the way to the finals in youth nationals. But just in terms of for you, just starting first off with you growing up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that's where you were born. Just what's it been like growing up in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, it's a pretty big hockey hub. It's not one of the biggest, but I actually got into hockey because of my neighbor. He started playing hockey, started skating, and whenever I was young, I just watched him, and I was like, wow. And I also like the Pens a lot, so I went to a lot of Pens games when I was younger. But it's honestly a great city to live in, so not much to complain about.
Yeah, that's awesome. My sister is a huge Sidney Crosby fan, maybe the biggest fan you'll find out there. And unfortunately, they weren't able to move past the first round this year. They ran into a team and a head coach. I like to call him the Penguin Killer now because it seems like he always takes him out. It's Barry Trotz. But speaking of just you being a huge Penguins fan, did you have a chance to go and see any of the playoff games live this year, or were you just watching from home?
No, I was watching from our dorms. I was still at school finishing my final exams, so definitely a bummer. But
yeah, what are you gonna do? There's always next season, right?
yeah,
But yeah, it would be awesome to see Crosby and that aging core of him, Malkin, Latango on another cup run soon in the future. But yeah, just for you, just your first season playing for Bishop Kearney, the Selects. I'm pretty sure I read that it was the team's inaugural season this year, the program.
yeah, it was our first season this year.
Yeah. So what was that decision like for you to go over to play for this team in their inaugural season when you were playing with the Pittsburgh Penguins Elite 13U team the year before, obviously playing in the 14U AAA league this year. But why make that decision to transition into playing with the Selects this season?
Yeah, so my mom wanted me to go to a boarding school, and she wanted me to mature and be away from home. Um, but it was actually a great transition. Went really smoothly. I met a lot of great guys. This campus was nice. The teachers were nice. The coaches were nice. There's nothing to really complain about.
Yeah, and you got a chance to. I'm assuming you met him, Ryan Callahan, director of player development. Just I'm assuming you had a chance to meet him. Just what was that experience like of meeting a guy like Ryan Callahan?
Yeah, he played. He had a terrific career in the NHL, and he's our skills coach. So definitely being on the ice with him, learning tips from him, definitely will affect how I play in the game.
What were the biggest takeaways you took from just the stuff that Callahan, Mr. Callahan, was able to teach you?
Some takeaways that I have was he actually helped with my passing a lot and helped with my skating stride and making better divots in the ice. So it was actually helpful a lot. And if he wasn't here, I don't know how good my skating could be.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just learning from an ex NHLer, just getting to really craft your skills, become a better skater, as you said, and work on your passing as well. Just talking about the whole coaching staff and in general, just the coaching staff that you guys had, just in terms of how they helped you as a whole develop in your first season as a select.
Yeah, a lot of them had great careers, OHL careers, NCAA careers. Definitely a lot to take away. Even one got drafted in the NHL. But my biggest takeaway with them was they kept pushing me to my full extent, and I couldn't thank them enough for the season that they gave me this year.
Let's talk about the routine. Of course, you said, when the Penguins were playing in their first round matchup, you were still in school doing exams, watching the game in the dorm. Just what was that like this season? Just trying to balance the off ice routine as well as the on ice routine out there.
Yeah, after school we had off ice. We'd have off ice, and then we'd have a skills session, and then we would have another skate with our team. But definitely to balance it out, I would stretch a lot before I went in the workout room because sometimes I would skip stretch and I'd be like, oh, it's fine. But after, I'd get really sore on the ice, so that didn't feel really good. But the biggest takeaway I have on and off the ice is the more effort I put into it, the more I'm going to get out of it.
Yeah, for sure. So you just learned that, like, in terms of just going into practices and stuff, like if you put in that same game effort that you would put in a game, putting it into practice, that would help benefit you
Yeah.
going in your play in games and stuff.
Yeah, because some guys just take practice easily, and you can only do what you push yourself to do. So
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Just talking about just your routine before games this season. I mean, with juggling the off ice, on ice routines. I mean, for you, I'm assuming that pregame routine for you before games stayed the same. What exactly is that pregame routine for you?
yeah, so I'd get to the rink, home games. Like with COVID, it was a little bit different, but home games, I'd get there. I'd like to say 2 hours before the game. I'd sit in my stall, listen to some music, and then go up to tape both of my sticks, and then just sit behind the net and just look at what I'm shooting at, and whatever. And then I always bring a banana too. So after that, I'll be eating a banana and just sitting behind the net.
Yeah, the banana, the classic choice for athletes. It's great. It's great. When I played my competitive minor hockey, I'd always bring a banana to the rink
Yeah,
or just eat it on the car right there. But just yeah, I think that's awesome that before games you sit behind the net and just visualize how exactly did that start for you, just in terms of when you started to really put that into your pregame routine in terms of just visualizing you going out there and scoring goals.
Yeah, no, because I did it as a joke first off, and next game I had like a hat trick, so I started to put
Mm,
it into my routine, and I actually realized that I like to look what I'm shooting at, so it definitely helps me a lot with visualizing where I'm shooting at in a game time situation.
yeah, and if it works, it works. And for you, it
Yeah,
worked that day, scoring a hat trick, scoring a hat trick. That's good stuff, good stuff. And yeah, just for you this season, I mean, you scored a goal per game. You played in 49 games. You had 49 goals, 77 assists, 126 points, and zero penalty minutes. And that's something that's interesting. Just for you being a player that had zero penalty minutes, just did you find that it was just you having that good discipline out there that allowed you not to put up a goose egg in that stat category?
yeah. I it's actually I had actually a lot of penalty minutes, but they just probably didn't update it on my late
Uh,
prospects. But no, I
yeah,
actually wasn't. I wasn't in the box a lot though. I stayed pretty disciplined throughout the year. Probably single digits still. I just I wasn't really a penalty guy.
yeah, and elite prospects screwed me, but it's
Yeah.
okay. It's okay. It's okay. Still, you were in single digits, which is pretty good. Pretty good. Still speaks to just how disciplined of a player you are. Just talking about you as a goal scorer, just where would you say you were most effective on the ice when it comes to just putting that puck in the net? Would you say that you're more of that guy that's going to just wind up and snipe it, or more of that guy that's going to go to those hard, dirty areas to get the goal?
No, I'd say most of my goals are within the house. A couple are probably without the house, just good place shots. But whenever pucks go to the net, you just need to get to the net. Most guys, whenever they shoot the puck, they stay away from the house. But you always got to go crash the net after you shoot a puck and get your second chances. Because a lot of my first chances won't go in.
Would you say in terms of that, just you going to those right places, just knowing where to be on the ice positionally, would you say that that speaks to just how your IQ is out there, how strong it is?
Yeah, I think my IQ is one of my best parts of my game. My ability to read plays, my ability to be in the right spots in the right time, definitely is a big factor in my game.
Yeah, and I mean, you showed it with your assists this year, 77 assists. I mean, just a big jump in that number from the season before, where you played with the Pittsburgh Penguins Elite 13U team, where you only put up 37 assists. Why, in your opinion, did you find that that number jumped so much this year? Would you say that was just you getting more comfortable as a playmaker out there, that IQ just evolving, or would you say that it also had to do with your teammates as well?
Yeah, I think that our team had a lot more depth than I did at Penn's, and I had a lot more people to work around, and I trusted a lot more people to give the puck to.
Yeah, and I did notice that the top three point getters were you on the Penguins last year. You, Jack Edwards, and Jack Rosensteel, and it seems like you guys were a deeper team this year. Did you find that your depth was probably one of the biggest factors in you guys being able to have such a huge run as you did, going all the way to youth nationals and making it to the final?
Yeah, I think it definitely had a big effect. At on my Penn's 13U team, we had two lines, and this year we had a solid three guys, three lines, three guys on each line that could play. So it was definitely a big effect on our run. And I think at the start of the year, we started our season like 2-3, and we ended off only losing three more games and won the national championship.
Wow. That's nuts. That's crazy. That's wow. That's insane. But yeah, just we'll get into that a bit more later. Just talking about just your game without the puck. Just where would you say that you're most effective out there when you don't have the puck, in terms of, yeah, just terms of any place on the ice?
Yeah, usually I'd like to say whenever I drive the net, but I think most effective is whenever I get outside the house and I create space for myself, and for whenever I'll go around the circle, like go around the tops of the circles and like fake a drop to a guy, and I'll have a lot more room to shoot.
Yeah, and I had a chance to come across two videos, two little highlight clips of you, I guess, two little plays. And there was one that was posted on Wagon Hockey. You totally undressed a defender. I wanted to get it up here, but unfortunately it wasn't loading. I want to show everyone all. I'll put that in the link of the description of this episode, of course, for everyone to watch. But there was another one. It was in the national championship game this year against Shattuck. And you came in, you fake the shot, put that puck in the money spot, and once that defender committed, you had an option to either shoot the puck or drag it through your legs, and you did that, creating space for yourself, further protecting that puck, and created a higher scoring chance for you, I guess, rather than the shot getting blocked. But just your ability to create with the puck, just has that always been a big part of your game, or is it something that you've seen develop over the years?
No, I think that it was my hands have definitely my best attribute, but I think my hands were okay. But I truly think that I put so much work in the off season in my hands that it's improved my game so much.
Yeah. And I gotta say, like, probably, like you said, just getting to improve your skating with Ryan Callahan, adding that to the set of hands you had, you felt that that made you an even more dangerous player out there.
Yeah, and obviously doing skating lessons with one of the RMU coaches at home definitely helps me a lot too.
Well, we're going to go into our first commercial break in tonight's episode. I've been joined by number 24 of the Bishop Kearney Selects 14U AAA team, Kristen Humphries, on this edition of the Prospect Show. We'll be right back with him to continue talking about his season with the Selects here on this edition of the show. But first, we're going to go to our first commercial break here on this edition of the Prospect Show. Stick with us.
Why go solar? Solar is better than ever. Our revolutionary design and inverter equipment with the latest in solar panel technology for the ultimate in-home and business security. That's right, I said security. Grid security and security of your home are linked. Fortify your future today with a battery backup system. No maintenance, quiet running. Did you know in Manitoba, grid-connected, off-grid, and battery backup systems are 100% right off in the year you purchase for any company or farm? Do you want to back up your internet, keep your tills running, and the lights on? We can install a system that is right for you with battery backup fully capable of taking on all those essential loads and keeping you running. When you call our experts at Evolve Green, ask about getting your free energy audit today. Call or email today to find out what system works best for you. 1-866-5EVOLVE or support@evolvegreen.ca. Also, be sure to check out our website at www.evolvegreen.ca.
Back on this edition of the Prospect Show with Kristen Humphries, number 24 of the Bishop Kearney Selects 14U AAA team. Of course, that team went all the way to the national championship in youth nationals this season, but ended up falling short, losing to Shattuck St. Mary's, their 14U AAA team. And yeah, just an update for our viewers. If you guys missed the end of the Jets game, I wasn't able to watch the end, but I got the update on my phone, and yeah, we're down 2-0 in the series now. Unfortunately, it's not what you like to see at this point. After sweeping the Edmonton Oilers, now we're down 2-0. But that's besides the fact. Welcome back to this edition of the show. We're going to continue talking about the 2021 season here with Kristen. It's just you guys go all the way to youth nationals this season. I mean, you guys end up going all the way to the finals. You put up a stellar season, to say the least. I think even more than stellar with the points you put up. But yeah, just speak about what that road was like to qualifying for nationals first off.
Yeah, so we had to go through our state, which is New York State, and we weren't nervous going into it, but New York State told us that they're not giving out bids this year because we were the second ranked team. So that meant if we lost, we wouldn't be able to go to nationals. So like going into that, we were all like, we actually have to win this, and we knew that we had no pressure starting it, and we knew we didn't have any pressure after they told us that. We just had to go out and do our job. But it was definitely a hard run. The championship game, the first 5 games we like swept every team. In the championship game, we outshot the team 71-14, and we only won 3-1. So goalie definitely stood on top of his head, but we ended up winning. So that's all that matters.
Yeah. And you guys went out there, did your thing, and it resulted in a berth in the youth nationals. Just to see the team, being able to outshoot a team like that in as big of a game as it is, just the way you guys were playing so dominant coming up. Just how nice was that to see that you guys were hitting another level going into youth nationals, coming into competing with the best from around the country.
Yeah, at the start of the year, we were all like none of us. I don't think any of us minds were on nationals, and like I said, we were 2-3 going into it, and we started to go on a streak, going 155 days without losing, and what can I say? 3 of our losses were to Shattuck, another was to third-ranked team Boston Junior Eagles, but definitely playing a lot of the top teams before nationals definitely prepared us, and we knew what was coming at us.
To be able to have that run in that crazy span of like 155 games of not dropping a game is absolutely insane. I don't think I've heard anything like that before on this show out of any of the guests that I've had on, but just what, like, of course, like you always want to prepare for your best to go out there and play and, put out your best product on the ice. But to do that consistently over and over again for 155 days, just how much does that speak of just how this coaching staff would get this team to be prepared for the games?
Yeah. After a couple games, we were like, yeah, we're on a winning streak, and after a couple more games, we're like, wow, we actually have a good streak going. And the coaching staff definitely was there for us. We implemented systems that helped us win. Implemented a good power play. I couldn't be prouder enough being on that streak, but definitely sucks that it snapped.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. But yeah, just in terms of course, the coaches, it's a big part of their job getting you guys prepared to play. But for players, just taking it into your own hands and just putting that product out there of just how good you guys were. Just how did that streak speak to just the preparation that not only you but all the players had coming into games?
Yeah, all of us were all focused. All of us were listening to music, get a good warm up, and I'd like from our 13U team, my 13U team at Penn, so our 14U team, by warm ups, by getting to the games on times. There was a big difference, and I really knew we had something special.
You guys finished 3-0 in pool play in the youth nationals. You guys were able to make it all the way to the finals, of course. Just starting off strong with a 9-2 win over Team Maryland, going up against the Minuteman Flames and Chicago Mission. You beat Maryland 9-2 to start off. You beat the Flames 5-0, and you beat Chicago Mission 5-3. Just going into that tournament with a lot of pressure, just with how you guys were able to handle it and the qualifying stages before, just did you feel like knowing that you could handle the pressure before coming into the tournament was a big reason why you guys were able to get off to the start you were able to in youth nationals?
Yeah, obviously, we crossed with Shaq's division, and of course they were the best team in the tournament. And if we were the number 2 seed, we would cross with them in the quarterfinals. So out with a lot of pressure, we knew that we had to play our best game, and one mistake could cost us the tournament in pool play. So I think that definitely helped us throughout the tournament.
You finished the tourney with 6 goals, 5 assists, 11 points in 6 games played. You were 5th in the tournament in points, tied 4th in goals. Just for you to come out and perform that consistently, game in, game out on the biggest stage in your career up until this point. Just how nice was that to see for you, that everything you were working on up until that point to get there really translated and came out in that tournament?
Yeah, definitely happy with my performance, but it still sucks that I couldn't do enough to win us a national championship. But at the same time, I couldn't be prouder than myself.
Did you find that you saw parts in your game elevate at times in that tournament to be able to have that type of stat line that you did?
Yeah, in playoffs, I thought I was playing my best hockey, and I was giving us a chance to win all the games that we were playing.
Yeah, and you guys end up beating the St. Louis Blues team 6-2 in that quarterfinal matchup. You match up with the Boston Junior Eagles, like you said. That was one of the teams that gave you guys a bit of trouble in before the tournament. But just to be able to go out in that semifinal matchup with a lot on the line, a championship berth on the line, winning that game 4-3 in a shootout. Just take me through that experience of having to go through all the emotions, the ups and downs before that, and just being able to win that in a shootout.
Yeah, so at the start of the year, before when we played them, we lost both games, 4-3 in overtime. Then we lost 6-1 to them, and so we played them in Pittsburgh championship before, and we beat them. So a lot of people were favoring them throughout the game, and a lot of us just wanted to prove them wrong and come home to national championship berth.
Just what was that like? I'm assuming that you got to go in the shootout. What was that like for you to be able to go out there and to perform in the shootout?
Yeah, I went second on our team, and the other team went first. So all the first three shooters missed, and so it was the best of five, and I was the fourth shooter, and we scored. So it definitely gave our team a lot of confidence going into the next round.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you guys did fall short. 7-2 loss to Shattuck, but I mean that Shattuck St. Mary's team, man. Let me tell you, just stacked. I've had a chance to talk to Cole Eiserman and Macklin Celebrini here in the show, and just the types of seasons that they put up, along with guys like Brandon, with Zemer, and a guy like Aiden Park. It's just they had a lot of lethal scoring power for sure. That's no doubt about it. But just being able to have that experience of going up against a team like that in the finals, I'm sure that there's a lot of takeaways that you were able to take away from that experience, even though you did end up losing the game.
Yeah, so just being on the players with being on the ice with some of those players is just incredible. Seeing how they play, seeing what they do in different situations is fun to watch, and definitely playing for national championship against them might be a little bit nerve-wracking, but it's really fun at the same time.
How are the crowds out there? Were you guys able to have any fans out there during the youth nationals?
Yeah, I'd say for the semifinals, in the shootout, we had 400, 500 people, and I'd say in the national championship there's about roughly the same amount.
Wow, that's pretty good. Pretty good, especially in times like this. What was that like, being able to go out and perform in front of a crowd like that in those big moments?
Yeah, it was definitely a little bit nerve-wracking, but after a couple shifts on ice, it settles down.
Yeah, no doubt about it. For sure, for sure. Gotta always get settled and settle into the game, and then those nerves go away once you're able to settle in. But just your team went through had a successful season, to say the least, even though you guys ended up losing the final game of the year. Just what was it like being able to bond with all the players that you had a chance to play with this season on your team?
Yeah, definitely living in a dorm with a couple of them definitely helps a lot too. And just being around with a group of buddies, living in a dorm with no parents, definitely helps us bond a lot better as a team. But I couldn't be prouder, and they're all like brothers to me. So
For you, after the season ended, you had some time to kind of have that loss digest. Just what do you think were the biggest takeaways that you saw in your game this year in terms of stuff that you did good, stuff that you did bad, not as good, that you're looking to improve on heading forward into your career and into your, I guess, your next season, next year with the Selects?
Yeah, I still think that I keep working on my skating, but I think there's still another level that I can bring it to. And I think that also another level I can bring to is my hands are really good right now, but I want to see what I can keep adding to it.
For you, just your parents wanted you to go to a boarding school and for you to mature, right? And you had a chance to do this year, being able to live in a dorm, being able to, bond with teammates, just, being a leader on this team. How at the end of the season at this point now, how much can you speak about your maturity and where it's at compared to where it was at from a year ago?
Yeah, I've matured a lot being away from my family, being away from a lot of friends at home, uh, and definitely from my 13-year to my 14-year. I definitely flipped a switch on focusing a lot more on hockey, working out a lot more in the summer, and just training a lot harder.
Well, we'll get into some of those training things that you do, the stuff that you do for your training, and a whole lot of other stuff here in this edition of the Prospect Show. This is the first interview that we're doing in tonight's edition of the Prospect Show. I've been joined by Kristen Humphries, number 24 of the Bishop Kearney Selects 14U team here on this edition of the Prospect Show. I'll be right back with him in just a moment, but first, another commercial for you guys to watch. Stick with us.
Welcome to Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy, your world-class academic and hockey training facility created to maximize each student's athletic and academic potential. Blackjack Stewart Arena, home of the Buffalo, is inside the 46,000 square foot complex, as well as a curling rink and other facilities. The students have a unique combination of successful, well-rounded education at Pilot Mountain Collegiate Institute and the professional hockey training in an encouraging community. The years of experience of on-ice coaching propel our students to the next level, both mentally and physically, in a professional environment.
Welcome back to this edition of the Prospect Show. While I wait for Kristen to hop back on, I'm just going to add him in here in just a moment. Of course, we are live tonight, so for anyone that is tuning in, we thank you for tuning in tonight. And yeah, be sure to give us a follow on our Facebook at ASTV Productions, as well as subscribe to our YouTube, Amateur Sports TV, and you'll be able to check out all the great content we have here on the network. Not only this show, which is the Prospect Show, but other shows like Coffee with Graham, which is my other show, Rise and Shine Manitoba, which is my other show, and there's a lot of other great shows on the network besides mine. So yeah, give them a chance, check them out here on ASTV Productions on Facebook and on our YouTube at Amateur Sports TV. But here he is now, Kristen Humphries, joining me on this third segment, I guess we'll call it that, on tonight's episode and this first interview. Of course, I've been just talking to Kristen about just a bit about growing up in Pittsburgh. We'll get into more of that as the show goes along. We've been diving in heavy to just his time playing with the Bishop Kearney Selects 14U team this year, getting to play on that team in their inaugural season, and just how much just being able to do what you guys did in an inaugural season with a program that's just starting up. Just how positive and just confident are you to see how this program is going to grow for you guys next year?
Yeah, I think that making a big run nationals definitely helped it out. And definitely a lot more kids are going to want to come in after hearing what we did this year. But just putting on that jersey every day definitely is a special moment for me, and definitely a special moment for all the players on our team.
Yeah, That's awesome. That's great. And yeah, we're gonna step away from that and just dive into your time playing for the Pittsburgh Penguins Elite 13U team. Of course, you had a chance to play on them in 2019, 2020. Uh, just being able to play for that team, your favorite team being the Pittsburgh Penguins in the NHL, with you growing up in Pittsburgh and being born from there. How is that like, just being able to wear some sort of penguin on the jersey?
Yeah, definitely being a hometown kid too, and loving the Pens. Definitely was an honor for me to play at the NHL practice facility, and being around a lot of the guys that work with the Pens all the time, and just being in the gym with the guys. Definitely, and having that nice of a facility in general, it was definitely awesome.
You put up a heck of a season, man, last year. Elite prospects. Hopefully they got the stats right, but I'm just gonna say the goals, assists, and the points here. You had 45 games played, 57 goals, 37 assists, 94 points. I mean, just an incredible season in your first year in that league. Just what was that like for you, being able to put up that production in that first season of playing at that level?
Yeah, definitely. I didn't really keep track of my points, so I didn't know like how much I was at or how much I was going for. But just definitely putting up that many points is over 2 points per game is definitely ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think you have a right to say it's ridiculous, because you're the man who did it. You're the man who did it, right? Yeah, that's crazy. That's nuts. And you ended up leading the league from what I saw in points, from just where Elite Prospects took me to when I checked out the total points of just everyone in the league. You led the league in points by 10 from the next guy. So just to be able to have that type of an impact, would you say that it had to do with just that top line you were playing on, or just the type of player you were at that point last season?
It's the line I was playing on and the type of player I was. Whenever I would have the puck, my release was really good, and whenever I didn't have the puck, I'd find open space to get the puck.
Being able to play with guys like Jack Edwards and Jack Rosensteel, just what did that do for your development as a player?
Yeah, it definitely helped me out a lot. They're two solid players and great people, and I loved being around them whenever I was in Pittsburgh. But they're both still incredible players.
For you, like you talked about how like Ryan Callahan this year helped your skating and your passing. I mean, for you last year with the Penguins, you were more of that goal scorer. Not saying you weren't a goal scorer this year, but you had more goals than points in that season before, right before playing with Bishop Kearney. Just for you to be able to put up 57 goals, just where was your shot at in that season, just in terms of just how far along it came at that point in your career?
Yeah, my shot is a lot better right now than it was, but I think that whenever I was at Pens, I was getting the puck a lot more and I was shooting the puck a lot more. And this year, whenever I get the puck, I'd shoot a lot, but I would have a lot more guys open to pass to. And last year, it was like didn't really have many options to pass to. I was just shooting it more.
Do you think that really allowed you to be able to grow your game more in that season, just being able to hold on to the puck more and to be able to shoot it more?
Yeah, definitely from last season, from being a goal scorer to this season, being a guy that has a lot more assists, definitely having both those attributes is definitely going to help me down the road.
What would you say were some of the things that you struggled a bit with in that first season with the Penguins elite team? Just I know that you probably didn't struggle much, but just some of the things that you found in your game that needed some work back then.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, I think that my skating was just above average. It wasn't as good as it is now, and still I think there's a lot more improvement for it. But for now, I think that or I know that I've got to where it needs to be.
What was that like for you last year compared to this year? Just with the Penguins, just getting to bond with that group of guys.
Yeah, from last year, making a lot of friends on my Pens team, and from going back to BK, having a lot of friends that still reach out to me on Pens and ask how I'm doing is definitely, it's really cool.
Could you speak about how the coaching staff was in that year playing Penguins?
Yeah, so my head coach was Kevin Mahler right now. He's coaching the U16 Pens Elite, and they also lost in the national. They lost in the national semifinals this year, but he was an incredible coach. He was the best coach by far that I had at Pens in my 5-year career there. But it was an unbelievable season.
Yeah, and just being able to, like you said, working with someone that you think was probably the best coach that you had throughout your time playing there speaks volumes for sure. For sure. Just what would you say were probably the biggest things that he was able to teach you?
He taught me a lot about puck protection and a lot about my edges and playing along the boards.
Yeah, just more yet not being afraid to go into those dirty areas as much.
Yep.
Nice. How do you guys end up doing last season in terms of just how far you guys made it in whatever tournament you guys were playing in?
We played. We were okay. We went to a couple of quarterfinals. We won a lot of our games that we played. I think we were like 750 wins. So like in every 4 games we win 3 games, but we didn't play a lot of tournaments last year, but in a lot of showcases that we went to, we would go undefeated or we would go like 500. It was never below 500. So we had a pretty good team.
What was that like in your season as younger than you are now, of course? Just in that season, being able to go out and play against these players in showcases, just the type of experiences that you learn from the showcases.
Yeah, definitely from a lot of the showcases that I've been to, seeing players like Aiden Park there, Cole Eisman there, definitely seeing from what they were from last year to this year is definitely a big hop. And seeing a lot of those players play is just, it's incredible watching.
Just being able to be that focal point of the team's offense last year. Of course, one of 3 players that did put up most of the points with you, Jack, and Jack, I guess.
Yeah.
You and Jack. Just being able to grow as a player under the head coach, the coaching staff that you guys had. Just can you speak of the type of development that you saw in your game as that season progressed all the way up until the end last year?
Yeah, at the start of the year, I wasn't as confident as I was at the end of the year, and like the end of last year, I wasn't as confident I was at the start of this year. But I think that my confidence has definitely rose a lot, and I trust myself a lot more as a player to do more things with the puck.
Yeah, and just it allowed you really to grow that confidence and really carry it over and bring it to that BK Selects 14U team this year. So we're gonna move away from just talking about the hockey stuff right now in terms of the teams that you played on. But actually, before we do that, like you said, you had a chance to play with the Pittsburgh Penguins teams that you had a chance to play with for about 5 seasons. Just what was that experience like? Starting out playing in that type of situation, type of program?
Yeah, being there for 5 years, it was definitely like the first couple of years, it was like little kid hockey. So it was like my parents were really involved, even though it was like squirt minor, which I really appreciate them for. But definitely from seeing from squirt minor to squirt major or so on to my last year of Bantam minor, definitely just the progression that happened there definitely is a big help in my game.
Would you say that there's a favorite memory for you throughout those 5 years of playing with that program, the Pittsburgh Penguins elite programs?
I don't think I have a favorite memory there, but definitely after like games on the weekends, going like all of us having a team party at a couple kids' houses was definitely really fun.
What's it been like for you being able to travel to all the different types of places you've been able to travel to throughout your time of playing hockey with not only the Pittsburgh Penguins elite teams, but as well as just playing for the Bishop Kearney Selects this season?
Yeah, we traveled a lot on a bus together, or we flew to places and going to a lot of places around the country. Definitely was kind of fun. It was pretty fun to do. We were in Chicago, Iowa at one point, Detroit, Texas, Connecticut. It's definitely fun to see a lot of places. And like in the summers, I'll play for Midwest Selects, and we'll go to like Italy, France. We're supposed to go to Czech this year, but it got canceled from COVID. But just getting to travel a lot and seeing a lot of the world with hockey is definitely a big part.
That's nuts. Like France, Italy, just places like that. What was that like for you when you were able to travel to those places to just with that Midwest Selects team to be able to experience the different cultures and just how they play the game out there?
Yeah, it was. It's definitely the rink in Italy and the rink in France was a lot more different from the rinks that we played at playing in America, and just like the food that some of them eat, some of the languages that they speak, some of the things that they do, and some historical, just seeing some history. It's definitely cool.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. And you know what? We're going to actually dive into something, just getting to know you more as a person. Just of course, you grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Of course, you're aspiring to make it to the NHL, I assume, one day. And I mean, if you keep up this production, I mean, we could be seeing you there in the league when your time comes. But just for you growing up, was hockey always that sport that you, of course, you gravitated to it, but were there other sports too that you were able to play?
Um, I was one of the best soccer players in my state at the time, and I played baseball and lacrosse too. And I just think playing all those sports helped me with my hockey, my hand-eye coordination. But my dad played at he played on like the Alabama for football, and my pap played at Penn State for football. So my parents were like kind of confused how I got in hockey. So.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's awesome. It's just they can thank you, your neighbor for that for sure. No doubt about it. Yeah, crazy. Just your dad being able to play for Alabama, the Crimson Tide, and then like you said, your your pop is that?
Yeah, my grandfather.
Yeah. Yeah, your grandfather. Yeah. My apologies for absolutely butchering that the way you say it. But yeah, just him being able to play for Penn State, just having a strong background in the whole family of just really, really elite athletes. Just how, in terms of just your dad having those experiences of going through the college process and stuff like that, even though he didn't play, he never played hockey. Just how would you say your dad has helped you in situations and like just keeping your cool and just stuff like that?
Yeah, he's always there for me. Whenever I didn't play on like a boarding school, he would always take me to my games. He's always at every game still. That it might be in Ohio, it might be Detroit, it might be even in Iowa. It could be anywhere, and my dad will be there for every game, and same with my grandfather. So it's definitely great having both of them supporting me.
Yeah, for sure, no doubt about it. And of course, always great to have supportive parents. Of course, with you making the move to play for Bishop Kearney this season, it's great that they're always able to be there to support you. For sure, no doubt about it. But yeah, just for you, like you talk about how you like to play a lot of golf. Is there a player that you would say is your favorite to watch out there in golf, or do you even watch golf at all?
No, I watch a lot of golf.
Yeah,
I'd say my favorite player is probably Dustin Johnson.
yeah, yeah. DJ,
Yeah,
yeah, world number one, right? He's still number one in the world.
can't go wrong with DJ.
Never go wrong with DJ. Of course, he ended up winning the Masters in November of 2020. So this past November. So that was pretty cool to see. And of course, he's married to Gretzky's daughter, I believe. Yeah, if I got that right. So, I mean,
he's living life.
he's living life. He's living life, right? Being able to have a great one there too, being able to know him. But yeah, just in terms of just what some of your favorite hobbies are. Just do you have a favorite hobby, or do you focus more on just kind of sports as hobbies?
No, I don't really have a favorite hobby, but every once in a while I'll hop on the Xbox and play some video games with a couple of the boys. Play some
Of
NHL.
course. Yeah. Yeah. NHL 21 or another NHL?
No, 21.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question, because I'm doing this right now. I've been gaming a lot of NHL. I'm doing the career mode. Do you dabble in the career mode, or you just kind of go more into just playing with friends?
We play like more of hot. It's like
hot.
Yeah, like World of Chill. We have like our own team. So
that's pretty chill. Always chill to get together with the boys some way virtually and grind some chill. Has there been some late nights of you guys grinding, or you guys do other good hour? Yeah.
It's mostly good hour, but on weekends it gets pushed a little bit.
Yeah. You gotta be able to have that, right? Be able to have those weekends where you're grinding late at night playing the video games for sure. Just in terms of for you growing up in Pittsburgh, of course, like you said that it's a pretty good hockey hub. Just outside of hockey, just is there a favorite place that you have in Pittsburgh in terms of like a restaurant, a place maybe where you do some shopping?
There's a mall that is probably 15 minutes from my house. It's called the South Hills Village, and they got a good Dick's and Target right next to each other. So if I'm going spending, it's going to one of those stores.
Yeah. Are you the type of guy that likes to shop for like sports apparel, or do you look for more of those more of those other clothing brands?
And I forgot to mention that they have Lulu there too, so that's another big one. But it's more clothing brands, some sports apparel, not a lot.
Nice. And I see you're wearing a hoodie in this interview. For this interview, you a big hoodie guy?
Yeah, it's a Lululemon hoodie.
Lululemon, man. I remember one of my coaches always used to wear Lululemon, and we'd always give him a hard time because we're like, Coach, what are you doing? But you know what? Some of the stuff does look nice. I won't lie. But yeah, is there a favorite restaurant you have out there in Pittsburgh?
I'd say Franco's. It's an Italian restaurant. It's really good. Their spaghetti bolognese is really good. So it's always good to go there with family.
Yeah, you're making me kind of hungry. I want to kind of fly out to Pittsburgh right now and try it out. But you know what? Maybe one day, maybe when I'm in town, maybe we could go. If I ever go to Pittsburgh, I don't really see myself going to Pittsburgh anytime soon. But yeah, that's great. That's awesome. And you talked about how in pre-games and stuff, you listen to music. Is music something you find yourself listening to a lot on your downtime?
On my downtime, yeah, I like to listen to a lot of country, a lot of I'd say some Taylor Swift here and there.
T Swift, not too bad. I know of course, again, my sister is a huge fan. Me, not as much, but more of her older stuff I feel was more country for sure. And it seems like everybody I always bring on here is always either a rap fan or a big country fan. Just when did you exactly get in the country? Was that always the type of music you listened to, or did you grow up, before now, listening to some other stuff?
No, I'm in like I'm like 50-50 rap country, but country I listen to most of my rap, but like if I'm in the car or I'm going to like a hockey game or something, but besides that it's mostly country. Florida Georgia Line. Can't go wrong with it.
What about in terms of rap? What would you say is your go-to rap artist, or do you have a few that you listen to?
My go-to rap artist, I'd say, is probably Pop Smoke.
Pop Smoke, yeah. Rest in peace, Pop Smoke, gone too soon. But yeah, he definitely gets the boys fired up. I've heard some Pop Smoke, not too much, or Pop Smoke. My apologies. Yeah, not too much I've heard from him, but from what I've heard, he's pretty good. Is there an album that I should keep my eye on and listen to in the near future?
No, there's not really an album that I don't want to say there's a full album that's actually like solid. There's just a couple songs that are really good.
Yeah, that's solid. That's solid. In terms of just for you, in terms of a place that you want to see coming up in your later years here as you grow up. Of course, you've had a chance to travel to many places in hockey. Would you say that there's a place that you haven't traveled to that it's on your bucket list of wanting to see it, or is there a place that you've been to that you want to go back to in the future?
No, I'd say one of the places that I want to see is, I'd say Prague. It's a pretty cool European country, and I was definitely bummed that I couldn't go. I was looking forward to just not the hockey part, just everything around it.
Yeah, for sure. That would be insane going to Prague. Being able to check out that place. I mean, I feel like it has to be a beautiful place, right? Being out in Europe, everything seems nice out in Europe in terms of just the scenery, the landscape, all that stuff. But yeah, in terms of just, are you a big movie, TV guy, or are you more of a guy that just sits down on the couch and watches sports?
I can watch movies. I watch movies like here and there. I'm not a huge movie guy, but every once in a while I'll turn a couple movies. But I'm mostly a sports guy if I'm watching anything on TV.
Yeah. Is there a certain type of genre when it comes to movies that you like watching the most, or is it like whatever's on Netflix or whatever streaming service you'll use?
Just whatever's on. That's what I go for. Don't really have a certain genre.
Yeah. Is there a movie you've seen and been like, man, this movie is probably my favorite?
It's a show, but Outer Banks probably. They're coming out with Outer Banks too. So whenever that comes out, that'll probably be the next time I watch my next show.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of Outer Banks. I gotta give that one a try for sure. I am a pretty big TV guy. I want to watch as many shows as I can, and yeah, Outer Banks might be the next one I gotta watch. But I gotta finish Better Call Saul first. That's one thing I gotta do. But yeah, for you, in terms of just your biggest goal in your hockey career at this point, what would you say that is?
I'd say my biggest goal for the next upcoming years, national program, and then I want to try to go to college and then go from there to the NHL.
Yeah, seems pretty. Well, it seems like it would be a great plan. Seems like it would be, and I think you have the potential to do that. Obviously, with your skill set. Is there a player in the NHL that you would say you model your game after, or are you the type of player that kind of tries to be their own player?
No, I'd say I model my game after really well John Tavares. He's not a unbelievable skater, but his hands are really solid and his hockey IQ is off the charts.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Also a great two-way player, and prayers up to John Tavares. I know that he's doing better. Just the incident that happened was absolutely scary, but good thing. I'm happy that he's okay. Obviously, just you never want to see something like that, and just as it was a freak accident. And it's just one of those things that unfortunately happens in sports sometimes. But glad he seems like he's doing better and better every day. Just last question before I let you go. In terms of you as a hockey player, like we've talked about just different skill sets in your game, like your shot, your passing, your IQ, your skating. Just for you, how would you say that you would describe yourself as a player for everyone watching out there?
I want to say if I describe myself as a player, I want to say that my hands and my offensive power is definitely a threat, but just not off that. I'm a two-way player, and defense is just as important as offense.
Yeah, and you felt during this time playing for the Selects this year, your defensive game took another huge step.
Yeah, definitely. sometimes when I wouldn't back check, my coaches would get on me. If I wasn't in a certain spot in the D zone, my coaches would tell me. And even in practice, we would just work on D zone, D zone, D zone. So that definitely helped a lot too.
Well, that's great, Kristen. And actually, one more question before I let you go. Who would you say your favorite NHL player is?
My favorite NHL player is I'd say definitely Nathan MacKinnon.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Nathan MacKinnon is having an outstanding playoffs.
Yeah.
He's going absolutely insane right now. I heard on TSN today, the sports network. That's the Canadian version of ESPN here. I guess you could call it that. That's what you would compare it to from Canadian to US stations. But they said that at this point, like, he's the heavy favorite to win the Conn Smythe this year in the NHL, which is like the playoff MVP. And no doubt about it, if that team goes all the way, I think Nathan MacKinnon, no doubt, 100% gets that award for sure.
100% agreed.
Yeah, why would you say Nate is your favorite player out there?
His IQ is off the charts. His speed is ridiculous. Just like the goal he scored against the Vegas, he made the D look like he didn't know how to skate.
Yeah.
But he's just a fun player to watch and a fun player to roll my game after.
Yeah, for sure. He's got the speed, the shot, the power. I mean, the defensive game, he's got the whole package. And yeah, it's like watching someone play, like that goal he scored against Vegas in game 1. It was like watching someone play NHL 21 on rookie mode.
Yeah.
Just
exactly like it.
To be able to do that against the best players in the world, against a team that they only got the President's Trophy, I believe, based off of tiebreak. And to be able to do that to world-class defensemen, it's just, wow, crazy. But yeah, Kristen Humphries, forward centerman of the Bishop Kearney Selects 14U AAA team, joined me as the first guest in tonight's edition of the Prospect Show. I want to thank you for coming on tonight, Kristen. It was awesome getting to talk to you, man. Just getting to talk about your years with the Penguins organization, their elite program, as well as your year with Bishop Kearney. And hopefully down the line, if something comes up next season and you're tearing it up, we'll have you on the show again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, Kristen. That was Kristen Humphries. I'm going to let Kristen go now, but first we're going to go to another commercial break here in tonight's episode. I'll be right back to introduce the next guest in tonight's show here on ASTV Productions. But first, another word from one of our sponsors here on ASTV.
At Super 8 Winnipeg West, we have your comfort in mind with free Wi-Fi and free daily Superstart breakfast. We also have guest laundry facilities, a state-of-the-art fitness center, and a jetted hot tub. Sleep well in a spacious guest room equipped with plush new bedding, a 50-inch flat-screen HD TV, microwave, mini refrigerator, and Keurig coffee maker. Or book a suite with a kitchen, ideal for extended stays. Super 8 Winnipeg West, located just inside the perimeter on Portage Avenue.
Welcome back to this edition of the Prospect Show on ASTV Productions. Of course, Kristen Humphries, number 24 centerman for the Bishop Kearney Selects 14U AAA team, joined me on the show tonight. We dove into his season this year with the Selects, just talking about the unreal production he put up, as well as just talking about the season he had last year with the Pittsburgh Penguins Elite 13U AAA team, and much more. If you guys missed it, be sure to check it out after this episode is done airing. But yeah, we're going to move into our second and final interview of this week's show, and I'm actually going to let you guys go and enjoy the interview after this, and I'm not going to come back after. It's just, you're going to see this interview and then the episode's it's going to end. But before I introduce who this next guest is, I just want to thank everyone who decided to watch tonight for tuning in. It means a lot for everyone to tune in, who does tune in to the Prospect Show every week. I also want to thank our sponsors in advance before we start this new segment, this next segment, just for sponsoring this week's edition of the show. And in terms of when you can watch the Prospect Show next, we're airing an episode again next Friday at 9 p.m. I guess 8 p.m. Central Standard Time is when it would air. I'm just realizing that I now got that mixed up. Got my time zones mixed up by accident. But next week at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, we will be airing another edition of the Prospect Show here on ASTV Productions. You can check it out on our Facebook at ASTV Productions, or you can also check it out on our website at astvproductions.com. And I hope that you guys decide to tune into that one for sure. It's going to be fun. We're going to have some other guests joining us next week, of course, who aren't the ones in this episode. But let's get into who the final guest is of tonight's episode. It's a guy named Taylor Staden. He is a mental coaching performance coach, or mental perform. He's a man. I am mixing up my words. Anyways, you're going to hear about it in the interview. He has his own podcast called the Mental Dive Podcast. And I had a chance to ask Taylor about just what mental performance coaching is. That's the word that came to my head now. But I had a chance to ask Taylor about what mental performance coaching was in tonight's edition of the show. I also had a chance to ask him about the Mental Dive Podcast, of course, just the guests he's been able to have on. And we also dive into some other things as well. And this interview was pre-recorded. We did it on Monday of this week, so on May 31st. I'm going to pop it up right now. So enjoy this interview with the host of the Mental Dive Podcast, Taylor Staden, in the second part of tonight's edition of ASTV's Productions presentation of the Prospect Show here on ASTV. Enjoy. Joining me now on the Prospect Show, the second guest in tonight's show, it's Taylor Staden. Taylor is involved with mental performance coaching. He's the host of the Mental Dive Podcast, and he's also had a chance to be featured on the Elite Development Podcast. We're going to get into all of that in this interview tonight. But Taylor, how are you doing? I know that I said this interview's tonight, but we're doing this pre-recorded on a Monday morning of this week. How's life where you're at? I know that you're in the Eastern time zone. So you're from Toronto, Ontario?
The Toronto area. Yeah. I grew up in New York region, in a smaller town called Bolton. And then now I'm just out east, more towards Belleville, in a small town called Trenton. So it's a couple hours east of Toronto. But I'm doing well on this Monday morning. It's been a good weekend. Weather's beautiful out. It's been a great time to get outside, go cycling, be active. So a lot of things to be grateful for. And, things are looking up with the pandemic too, with all the vaccinations happening, and hopefully we'll get back to a new normal sometime soon. How's everything out in Manitoba?
Well, we can't see anybody in outdoor gatherings at all right now. It's pretty rough. Our numbers are not the greatest. But we're trying to get through it. Like you said, as long as basically people are getting vaccinated, it'll make the process speed up a lot quicker. But that's the thing. People just need to buy in and get vaccinated. I think that's the biggest thing in this time. But we're going to talk about just not COVID-19, but just how you grew up, where you grew up. You said you were born. I forget now, like somewhere near New York. Just how was it like growing up there?
Well, not near New York, somewhere around Toronto, but so I was born in Brampton, lived in Barrie for a bit as a kid, but really grew up in Bolton, Ontario. And all throughout my life, I've always been really involved in sports. Mainly played ice hockey growing up, played, and then a little bit of baseball, basketball. Now more into cycling and running. But I had that kind of common dream growing up that I feel like a lot of Canadian kids have, where you want to play in the NHL, you want to be the next Matt Sundin, but it came to a point where I realized I wasn't that good. So I had to make a decision, and the way I kind of saw it, Graham, was I said to myself, okay, well, maybe I can't get to the NHL as a player, but what are some other ways I can still maybe get there in a different capacity? Like, what are some other career options here? And so I looked at everything from from massage therapy to being a sports agent, and I took accounting, and I was like, oh, I don't want to be a sports agent now. And, so as I was going through these different career paths, I came across the field of sports psychology, which I found really interesting because I've always enjoyed helping people as well. And so, I saw sports psychology as a way to help people, but do it with athletes and do it in a hockey rink or on a soccer field or something like that. So that's what led me to completing an undergraduate degree in sports psychology at Laurentian University. And since then, I moved on to working on a dual master's degree in sport and exercise psychology and sports science at the University of Thessaly in Greece and Leipzig University in Germany. And so that's really where I'm at right now. And then from the mental performance consulting side, I work with a handful of athletes right now, just slowly building my practice. Athletes across leagues like the Ontario Hockey League, the USHL, the NAL, NCAA, leagues like that.
Right on. Yeah, that's amazing. Just the journey you've been through to just choosing this path. Just for you, how's that journey been along the way of just going through schooling and just diving into the mental side of things of just in sports?
I think it's interesting because I feel like the more you learn, the less you realize you actually know.
Yeah.
So as I go through school, you might come out of an undergrad and think, okay, like I have an undergrad degree, like I'm good, like I know a decent bit. And then you really realize, wow, I don't really know all that much. I know some foundations, I know some basic stuff, but there's a lot of things that you might learn in school, but then when you have to actually apply them in different environments, they might look quite a bit different. So really the learning process has been interesting in that way. And I think it really speaks to the value of being a lifelong learner, really in any field you're in, because right when you begin to think you know everything, that's when you start to really limit your potential and get that fixed mindset. And you're not really keen on learning maybe new methods coming out or what research is out or, what are some ways that maybe you can progress yourself. Because that's when we really start to stop seeing gains, is when we think we know everything.
Yeah, for sure. I love that message. It's like always keep an open mind and always be open to learn, basically, and that's how we're gonna get better, right? But for you, near the start of going through this process, was it always like that for you? Was it always like, man, I should keep an open mind, or were you kind of starting out like, man, I feel like I know everything. What else is there to learn?
I feel like I never got caught in the idea of thinking I know everything, because I certainly don't, and I don't know everything now, and I
Yeah,
never will.
yeah,
But I think it's just important just to keep an open mind when it comes to other people's perspectives and opinions. That's one of the cool things about studying abroad too, is that you get to hear a lot more international perspectives and how they do mental performance training, and the different cultural aspects of it too. So I don't think, yeah, again, I don't think there's ever been a point where I've felt as if I was like set or anything like that. Because I do try to learn something new every day, as cliche as it sounds. But yeah, no, I consider myself to be pretty consistent in my learning.
Just traveling abroad, just going to different places for school, and just what was it like just getting to learn the different, I guess, were there different ways of them doing stuff compared to what they do here in Canada?
Uh, from a mental performance side, or just from a general cultural society side?
Just general cultural society along with that mental side of things as well.
Yeah, so I didn't get to go too much into the mental performance coaching side of things while I was abroad, just because the pandemic restrictions tightened up really quick, and it came to a point where they actually had a text messaging system where you had to send a text with a predetermined reason from numbered 1 to 5, I believe it was, to leave your apartment, and then if a cop were to ever come to you, you'd have to show them your phone to show that you like signed in or something like that. It was really, really interesting. But from a cultural perspective, when I was in Greece, they do a lot of things differently. And I think one of the biggest cultural differences I found is it's a lot more laid back culture. So when you look at like grocery stores, for example, or just general stores. Most of the stores are closed where I was from 2 to 6 pretty much every day. And then that time, I think they call it a siesta. And so, and during that time, like they don't work. They get a 4-hour break, and you might go grab coffee or go home for a bit and then come back and work a few more hours. Which was a very big change for me, just because I was caught quite a few times trying to get groceries at like 2:30 p.m. and the store's closed. So it was that was definitely a change for me, just getting used to that. And but I think there's a lot of benefit too, and key takeaways from just being there and seeing how they live their life, because as you know, in Canada, and we're usually a lot more like maybe a little more strict, a little more like tight, I guess. And like going over there kind of taught me to kind of like relax a bit and like take a breath and just enjoy life, instead of always being on the go. It made me appreciate kind of like taking time myself.
Yeah, for sure. So you would say getting that chance to move out to Greece and just moving abroad just really, really open your eyes to, just, I guess the old cliche goes, just taking a chill pill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of chill pills while I was in Greece, for sure.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Well, we're gonna dive into just what you do with the Mental Dive podcast, as well as mental performance coaching and elite development podcast as well when we get back here on this edition of the Prospect Show. I've been joined by Taylor Staden on this edition of the Prospect Show, my second guest on this week's episode. We'll be right back, but first, another word from one of our sponsors. Back on this edition of the Prospect Show with Taylor Staden, host of the Mental Dive podcast. That podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Breaker, Radio Public, and Overcast. So lots of places where you guys can find it. And what is the Mental Dive podcast? Well, we're going to get into that right now. So Taylor, what exactly is the Mental Dive podcast, and what you get into on that?
Yeah, totally. So the Mental Life podcast is a show I created in 2019. And really, it's interesting because oftentimes you'll hear people say sports are 90% mental, or, sports are, however percent mental. But the thing is that there's so many people that recognize the value and believe that it accounts for their performance, but they don't actually spend time to work on it or to train it. I'm sure there's plenty of reasons for that. But really, I just wanted to create a platform to really spread these messages and to have these conversations, and so people can realize that this is something you can work on. It's something that you don't have to have a problem to work on, and it's something that can make you better, right? And it's something, and on top of that as well, it's not something that has to be like boring or anything. It's if you look at like maybe kind of like the stigmas around what people think traditional like therapy is, for example, like you have to be laying down on a couch and people are asking you questions about your entire life, like that has value in some places. But when it comes to mental performance coaching, we're talking about your performance for the most part. We're talking about, how can we take what you're maybe already good at and make it better? How can we help you manage adversity? How can we help you work through roadblocks? So yeah, again, I just wanted to create that platform, and it's been really cool, honestly, having my own podcast. It's opened up a lot of opportunities for different conversations, to get to learn from a lot of different practitioners and athletes. And I've been very fortunate to have some guests on who I never thought I would have the opportunity to speak to. People, NHL players like Connor Carrick and Rob Schremp, and there's others, but it's just really opened up a lot of different opportunities, and I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's an awesome message. You can make it fun, mental performance training. It doesn't have to be not fun. And yeah, just I always look at it this way. Like you said, a lot of people think that sports are 90% mental. I always think of it as like the mental side of things, I think, is even more important than the physical side of things, because you could be in the best shape, you could have the best stamina, the most strength, but if your mind isn't there, if your head isn't right, you're not going to get those same results that you want. So just diving into the things that you preach and you help athletes with is just uh talking about just mental performance coaching. Now, first off, I'm sure that it also links into the mental diet podcast as well, but the things you help athletes doing that, just with mental toughness, keeping their cool, confidence, consistency, focus, routines and habits, plus a ton more. Just how does that kind of relate into the messages that are set on the mental diet podcast?
Well, I think the podcast gives a good opportunity for us to have those conversations around those different mental skills and how maybe different athletes have applied them into their game. So, look at an example. I had Mads Sogard on the podcast, and he was in net when Canada beat Denmark. I believe it was 13-1, the one year in the World Juniors.
Yeah.
And he talked about how, as much as I may have not felt all that comfortable in the moment, he was actually really grateful for that experience because it helped him grow and he got to learn a lot from adversity. You take other examples of, Zach Fucali in the World Juniors. I was fortunate enough to have him on my podcast, and he talked about how keeping his cool in those biggest moments was key for him to perform well and to help win gold for Canada in the World Juniors. It was in 2013.
Yeah.
So again, it helps people, maybe athletes, realize the connection between mental performance coaching and the environment, and how maybe the work we do can help them achieve those certain results. Because like you said, you could have the best physical training in the world and preparation, and I'm not gonna devalue that. You need to train, you need to be in shape, because inversely, you could have a great mental game, but if you're out of shape and you don't practice your physical skills, you have no skills to carry out.
Yeah.
So when you think about it, it's now, how can I use mental training to help me skills I work on in practice, to show off really my physical performance so I can perform at my best more consistently? And that's where I really think the value of mental training is.
Yeah, and I think that, like I said, I think that physical training along with mental training goes hand in hand, and it's crazy. You've had a chance to talk to Connor Carrick, like you said, Zach McCallie, who, if people are a World Junior fan watching this, you know what he was able to do when Canada won gold, and that's that year that they did. But just what's it been like just having the opportunity to talk to so many hockey players, so many guests that are that have done so many things like Zach and Connor have done.
It's unreal, honestly. And that's not to and that's not to say that the other guests I've had on haven't been great experiences. I honestly feel like I've learned something from all my guests. But growing up a hockey fan and being a Leafs fan, in which, just for the record, we will see the Jets next round. Calling it now. Leafs are closing it out tonight against the Habs. But that's a side note. Anyways, and being able to talk to a guy like Connor Carrick and pick his brain and ask him, questions and be curious. I remember when I was interviewing him, in the middle of the interview, I actually had to kind of take a step back and kind of realize, wow, like I got to have a conversation with an NHL player now on my podcast. And it kind of just made me feel like a sense of gratitude, and then I re-engaged back in and I finished the interview, obviously. But it's been really cool, and I think, again, kind of alluding to what I was saying prior, having the opportunity to learn more about how maybe some professional players already apply these skills and maybe what the culture is like around them helps me improve on my effectiveness as a consultant with the athletes I work with. Because I have a better idea of how maybe it's perceived and how it can be applied. And then you can use examples of different players to help kind of get that buy-in sometimes as well.
Yeah, and I guess since this episode is going out tonight on Friday, game 7 was tonight when we're recording this. I guess we'll see if the Leafs do make it through or not. It's going to be crazy if they blow that 3-1 lead. But we'll step away from that. We'll continue talking about the Mental Dive podcast. Just you've had a chance to learn so many things, like you said. You feel like you've had a chance to learn at least something from all the guests that you've had on. But what would you say is probably the biggest thing you've learned along the way of just doing this podcast in terms of what you've learned from guests?
Ooh, big question. There's this one exercise that actually really stands out to me. And it comes from my episode with Dr. Jesse Michelle, who's the mental performance coordinator for the Houston Astros. And so I'm gonna ask you a question, Graham. Right now, I want you in your head to think about what is 3 divided by 10 times 6 plus 7.
3 divided by 10
plus 6
times 7.
Yeah. So I don't want you to actually answer that question.
Yeah.
But what I do want you to realize is that when I ask you that question, your eyes in your head kind of went away from the screen, right? You weren't focusing maybe on our conversation because you were thinking. And that's the same thing that happens when we're in the batter's box or when we're in net. Because when we aren't focused on the task and when we have these irrelevant thoughts in our head, like maybe some hard math question, right? Or maybe if let's say you're a goalie, you're thinking about a goal you let in earlier in the game, or you're worried about the scouts, or you're worried about what the coaches think, or the draft. Now, your attention is taken away from what matters right now, being the puck and being square. And your eyes are really swaying away from what matters in that moment. So if we are being distracted by these relevant thoughts, it's going to affect our ability to be present and to focus on what matters right now. And for our example, that would have been, again, our conversation. And it's the same thing whether you're in the batter's box. You're thinking in your head, is it a curveball? Is it a fastball? What if I miss? What if I strike out? What if I fly out? Instead of just being present and focusing on what you can control in the present moment.
That's incredible. And I was going to say, there's no way I can answer that math question, but that's insane. That's a great way to put it. My mind's blown. Yeah, it's crazy because, I think that being able to focus is probably one of the biggest things in terms of just, being out there as an athlete. You got to stay focused at the task at hand. And like you said, if you have these irrelevant thoughts in your head, you're not going to perform to the best of your ability, basically. But yeah, just you've had a chance to talk to, like you said, doctors, other consultants. Just how has that made you better as a mental consultant yourself?
I think one of the values is just the different strategies they share. That I've personally taken away and I've used with my athletes. I think that's been huge, but also just again the different perspectives and learning more about their stories and how they got to where they are too. Really just shines a light on maybe the different paths I could take to maybe reach those goals, and as well like getting to talk to consultants and people who work in the leagues and have those careers that I aspire to have. There's no really better person to learn from than the people who are actually there and do the work. So I think that's one of the biggest values. And again, they're also just great. A lot of them they're all really just great practitioners too. So having the opportunity to ask them questions and learn more about their perspectives again and how they apply mental skills definitely makes me a better practitioner, because again, nobody better to learn from, really.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And it seems like the podcast, the place you're in right now with your Instagram especially, is doing really well. 3,628 followers on Instagram. For you, just starting off, like you said, starting this podcast off back in 2019 up until now, how have you seen the growth of the podcast and just how social media has helped that along the way.
I think when it comes to marketing, I think podcasts are one of the greatest tools you can have. Because I'm sure through a podcast you can grab quotes, you can grab video, you can grab audio. Like there's really so much you can get from a podcast interview. And it's saying that gives a lot of opportunity to make different materials. And so through having a podcast now, that's allowed me to have maybe many different conversations, and maybe even just like ask questions that maybe I wouldn't necessarily answer myself, or I want to learn more about what someone else thinks. And then I can create content from that, but as well the opportunity to interview different people, and then they start to share it on their social media, and then you start to get different awareness. And so again, I guess what I'm really trying to say in a long-winded way is the fact that it's given me a good opportunity to make content. And the best way to grow your page is to be consistent with your content. And am I the most consistent with my content? Honestly, no. I have to get better at that. That's something that I have to actively work on. And one of the really cool things too is just by having so many different guests, and I've had guests from really all around the world. It really helps you connect with people from different parts of the world. So, I've been fortunate enough to connect with athletes who I now privately work with, who are from Europe. Right. And if I didn't have a podcast, or market myself on, social media, then I would never have the opportunity to work with these athletes. So I think that's one of the really cool perks of it too, is the opportunity to really connect with a lot of people who you wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to meet with.
Yeah, and like you said, I feel like keeping that consistency of uploading consistently is one of the hardest things, because it takes a lot of motivation for sure, of just to be able to do that. And that brings me to this question. It's just what do you feel keeps you motivated to continue making this content and just putting it out on a weekly basis?
I think it's just kind of reminding myself of my end goal. In the sense that like as much as I might do it just for enjoyment and everything, like I have to keep my end goal in mind as well. The fact that I am trying to market myself and be really good at what I do, and understand that this is part of my process, right? Like personally, there's a million things I'd rather be doing than be on Adobe Premiere Pro cutting audio and pulling my hair out trying to figure out how to do certain things. And it's like, I'm sure, as you can attest to, it can be really frustrating.
Yeah
Especially for someone like me, who that's not my field or my expertise. But at the same time, I have to kind of remind myself sometimes, like okay, if I want to work with some of the world's best athletes, and I want to have the opportunity to work with professional teams and reach some of these goals, then there's going to be a lot of things along the way that aren't maybe the funnest thing to do, but you have to understand that they're also part of your process. And that's something that you just have to do along the way. So I guess that's how I kind of keep myself motivated, is just accept the fact that it's part of my process, and just, again, remind myself of, why I'm doing it and what my end goal is.
Yeah, love that messaging. Just always remember that there is an end goal. And even though there's some stuff, like you said, like for you, editing in Premiere Pro and cutting audio isn't the funnest, it's all going to lead into you getting better in the end if you do these things. So we're going to go to break in just a moment, but how often does your podcast air in a week to week basis?
So it's fluctuated over the span of since I've started doing it. Going back to, I remember when I first started, I was like, oh, I'm gonna do like once a month or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And then I released an episode, and next thing you know, I released another episode 4 days later. So it's and then I kind of started doing it a little less frequently, and I got into the summer. And this was really when COVID hit, and I took it upon myself to try to stay productive. And so I started doing 2 podcasts a week, which was a lot of work. It kept me busy. Organizing interviews, cutting them, making clips, like it kept me pretty busy. And then I went back down to around 1 a week. But now I've been thinking about it lately, and I might start running them in seasons, because I feel like with seasons, what's good about it is the fact that you can kind of like take a break for a bit, but then you can also, in the off season per se, you can start recording interviews and then you can have them preset. So in that way, each week you're not scrambling for a new guest, which I find myself
Right.
sometimes doing,
Yeah.
which can be tough at times. So by having seasons again, it just helps you, I guess, maintain the consistency in a different way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that'd be awesome. Having it in seasons would be really cool. And yeah, like you said, you're gonna have a lot of benefits with just pre-recording some stuff and being able to use that later on. But yeah, guys, check out Taylor's podcast. It's on, like I said, it's the Mental Dive podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Breaker, Radio Public, and Overcast is the many places where you can sit down and listen. Or it's a visual podcast, or is it just audio?
No, it's just an audio podcast. So really you can just get it. I usually say myself the mouthful and just say anywhere you get your podcasts, you
Yeah.
can go grab it.
Yeah, anywhere you get your podcast, like
Yeah.
you said, yeah, that's where you can check it out. So I'm going to be right back with you, Taylor. We're going to dive into just a bit of what you do with the Elite Development Podcast, as well as mental performance coaching here on this edition of the Prospect Show. I've been joined by Taylor Staden, host of the Mental Dive Podcast, and a man that does many other things here on this edition of the Prospect Show. We'll be right back, but first we're going to go to our final commercial break here in the show. Back here on this edition of the Prospect Show with Taylor Staden, host of the Mental Dive Podcast. We were talking about that in the last segment, and now we're just going to dive into another podcast that he's featured on, as well as his mental performance coaching. So just talking about the Elite Development Podcast that you're featured on, just what's that about? And just, what's that podcast about?
So the Elite Development Podcast, I was fortunate enough to be asked to come on for an episode. And that's with a personal trainer out west. His name is Kearney Selects. I think I'm pronouncing the last name right. But he's like I said, he's a personal trainer, and he was kind enough to bring me in to do a workshop with some of his athletes a couple months ago. And he was kind enough to ask me to come on his podcast, and we discussed some things like we talked about values, and we talked about like different advice maybe I'd give to minor midget players who are maybe experiencing a bit of a fixed mindset. And it was good to be featured. And
So just diving into mental performance coaching. And actually, before we do that, I forgot to ask you this question. With COVID-19, obviously, it's changed so much of what we do, including just doing interviews. Like right now, even though we're in two different places, if we were in the same place, we'd probably be doing this interview in person. But we're doing this on a Zoom type of format. We're doing this on StreamYard, of course. But for you, just running your own podcast, just how has COVID-19 affected that?
I think honestly it's benefited it in a way, because although I was running interviews over, at the time I was using Skype, because that was before Zoom was really popular. So I was using Skype at the time in late 2019 to record some interviews, but I was also doing them in person with just some of my friends and some athletes I knew from my university. But I think when you look at some of the opportunities the pandemic posed, is the fact that a lot of people had more time on their hands at home. So meaning more people had time to talk, and it honestly probably gave a lot more opportunities to have interviews with people who I likely wouldn't have had the opportunity to before. So I think in a way, COVID-19's benefited my podcast, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. It's great that you've been able to find the positives in that for sure. But what about for mental performance coaching in terms of how COVID-19 has affected that?
It's impacted it quite a bit. So there's a certain feel, and there's a certain touch that goes with mental performance consulting, I find, when you're doing it in person, because you get to learn a lot more about the environments, and you get to do a lot of observing and being around teams if you're fortunate enough to work with a team. And then when COVID-19 hit, you find yourself having to adjust quite a bit. For example, learning to consult over Zoom, right? It's not always the easiest. Like if I'm doing a workshop for a group of athletes and a lot of them have their cameras off, it's kind of awkward at times, right? Like it's not the easiest, And so I think I think as I reflect on kind of how I've had to adjust, as much as I think it's been difficult, not having the opportunity to consult in person and be with teams and that way. But I think at the same time, it's really connected, similar to what I said before about the podcast, it's really connected the world in a way where we leverage, I think, video chatting and video meetings a lot more, where again, I now actually work with athletes from around the world, right? Like, right. One second I'm in the US, next second I'm in Canada, next second I'm in Europe, or not second, 1 hour I'm in Canada. You know what I mean? So, I think it's just helped us, as much as it's disconnected us in a way of in person, it's also connected us in a very different way. If that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of shown us a new way how to connect. For sure, even though we're not able to do it normally like we once were able to, but hopefully we get back to the normal soon. But yeah, just mental performance coaching. When did this exactly start for you? And just when did it exactly start?
Yeah, so for me, it would have started in the summer of 2019. I was working as a lead instructor at a basketball camp, and my boss was kind enough to let me run workshops twice a week with some of the athletes, just doing basic stuff like goal setting and emotional regulation, which was a really unique experience. And it's funny because I was actually looking back at some of the presentations I prepared the other day from a couple of years ago, and it just made me really reflect on my growth. I'm like, wow, like I've come a long way, right? Like I'm looking at these presentations, I'm like, I can make these so much better now, so it's so that's really started for me. And then given my undergrad degrees in sports psychology, I was fortunate enough to have an internship in my final year, so I got to work with a AAA hockey team for the year as their mental performance intern.
Yep.
And that was a really good experience. Got to learn a lot about applying mental skills into different environments and managing different facets of the profession. And then at that same time, that's when really the private consulting also really started to begin for me as well. And at this point, that's all I'm currently doing is just private one-on-one consulting with some group workshops here and there. And then, hopefully as things start to open up, I'll be able to start working with teams probably for the start of next hockey season. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I bet just being able to do that again for sure will be nice. And just diving into that, comparing just the one-on-one sessions compared to working with teams, just how do those experiences differ? Because I feel like when you're one-on-one, you get to only focus on one player, one person, right? But with a team, you there's a lot more moving parts. So just explain how what the differences are between the two.
So one-on-one is a lot more personalized, and that's one of the reasons why it's usually more expensive as well. Is the fact that when you're meeting with an athlete one-on-one, you're collaboratively working with them to help them reach maybe specific goals or work on specific areas they want to work on. Whereas if you're giving a group presentation, it's going to be a lot more broad, and you might speak, like I said, less narrowly about a certain topic, which then later on might open up some conversations with players if they realize from the presentation, oh, maybe I really have to work on that. I never thought of it that way. So I think, again, the one-on-one consultations are a lot more personalized, and you can usually get down to more of the nitty gritty and about certain problems, whereas group work is a lot more about more maybe psychoeducation and opening some of those doors for future conversations.
Just we touched about it earlier, just on like how it related to the podcast, but just the things that you help athletes do, just what you focus on: the mental toughness, keeping their cool, confidence, consistency, focus, routines and habits, plus a ton more. Obviously all of those are important, but would you say that out of those, is there one that kind of stands above the rest, or are they all important in building the athlete in that way with all of them involved?
Well, I believe they're certainly all important pieces to the puzzle and helping build, you want to call them a mentally tough athlete or a resilient athlete, but I think again, we're kind of going back to what we were talking about a bit earlier, is that helping an athlete learn how to carry out their skills in the present moment, so they can be ready for those defining moments is really what I think is most important. And a lot of that can come down to mindfulness. That can come down to being able to perform under pressure. And so, I'd say being able to, the skills that you work on, be able to be present, and regulate your emotions can be huge.
Yeah, for sure. So we were talking about the Leafs and Habs before we started this segment, and just what you feel like. You feel like the Leafs are going to win, obviously, but just for a team like this, of course, Vegas was up 3-1 in their series. They almost blew the lead, but they ended up winning in Game 7. For the Leafs, they're in obviously a similar position, up 3-1, and they end up losing the last 2 games. Just for a team like that, in terms of mental toughness, for a team that's in that position, just how much does the mental side of things come into play truly? Because for me, I feel like it's got to be all mental at this point.
It's very, very prominent right now. It's when you look at the Leafs history right now, they haven't won a playoff series since 2004. They kind of have this label attached to them that they choke in certain high pressure situations, Game 7s, and giving up leads. And when you watch the game and you see some of the tendencies of some of the players, you can definitely tell from what I can see that there's a lot of players who are maybe trying to do too much. And one player comes into mind is Mitch Marner, right? Like, he's one of their highest paid players on the team. He's amongst the highest point scorers in the NHL. And I guess when you couple that with the fact he's from the Toronto area, there's a lot of pressures. And so, it's easy to watch the game and be like, oh, why would Marner throw the puck into the stands when he wasn't really pressured and cause a penalty? But at the same time, you have to realize, like, it's not that easy. Like, in the moment, like, and that's an example of a player who's maybe feeling a lot of pressure, right? Maybe a player who's holding on to the puck a little too long, which we've seen, hesitant to shoot, maybe not trusting his skills, and playing probably to not make mistakes, which is a really dangerous road to go down. Because when we start to play to not make mistakes, that's when we really start to play out of fear. And playing out of fear isn't a good recipe for success, because hockey really is a game of consistent mistakes. Like when I was interviewing Rob Schremp, he gave the example of, you start a game, someone wins a faceoff and someone loses a faceoff. So if you're going to be caught up in trying to play mistake-free hockey, then you're going to go down in some really bad spirals and you're not going to be able to perform at your best. So having tools in place to help you move past mistakes, and like I said earlier, what's really important is to be able to regulate your emotions so you can be present, are really, really important. So when I look at someone like Mitch Marner, who's maybe you watch him play, you think he might be trying to do a little too much. You look at a player like Travis Dermott, who was playing a pretty solid game, and then he had a bad turnover at the end. These are all just examples of maybe players who are maybe playing really, really tense and tight, which directly relates to the mental game. And then again, that contributes to maybe some performances and some plays that they wish they could have back.
Right. And yeah, like we were talking about earlier, like if you're focusing on a lot of things other than the game, like you said, it's trying to be playing mistake-free hockey when that's just not possible. In a perfect world, it might be, but it's never going to be perfect in a game. But just for example, for Mitch Marner and this Leafs team to get out of that mindset, playing on the biggest stage, just what would be the steps to doing that, in your opinion?
I think you really have to reflect on what got you there in the first place, right? Leafs were a dominant team throughout the season, amongst the best teams in the league. They're pretty consistent against Montreal as well. And so I think a lot of that just falls on the trust you have in your abilities, and kind of keeping it simple, right? To quote the great Michael Scott, keep it simple, stupid, right?
Yeah.
Right. Like if, there's no sense in playing a certain way and having that success, and then all of a sudden getting to the playoffs and trying to overcomplicate things and doing things differently that are far different than what really got you there. So really, sometimes you just have to break it down, keep it simple, stick to your game plan. And then that way you can really start to use the skills and use the plays and strategies, again, that got you there in the first place, because the playoffs isn't really a time to start overcomplicating things, right?
Right. And I love how you threw out a Michael Scott quote. I'm a huge Office fan. It's awesome, Matt.
You got to throw it out when you can.
Yeah. Always. When there's an opportunity to quote Michael Scott or anyone from The Office, you got to do it. Take that opportunity for sure. So, yeah, just a few more questions before I let you go here on this episode, Taylor. Just I had a chance to look at, how you sign up for the mental performance coaching, and what I came across is there's a 2-minute survey before, and there's just like information that I feel like is good just for you to know firsthand. I think it's a great way to be able to get to know the person you're going to be working with before you even get to work with them. But just why the 2-minute survey before? What was your thought process behind that, and to putting that out in the process to people signing up for mental performance coaching?
I think one of the main reasons for that, Graham, is just the fact that it gives a really easy way for people to reach out, because sometimes athletes, they just don't exactly know what to say, or people don't know how to say, hey, like I need help with this, or I want to work on this. So by just trying to keep it really simple, you can do that. But it also helps me screen the athlete, and maybe see why they're reaching out, because there's certain areas for my expertise that I can work on, and there's certain areas that are out of my scope. So when we look at myself, when I offer mental training or mental performance coaching, that doesn't qualify me personally to work with psychopathology. So people who are experiencing depression or bipolar disorder, or very kind of like more on the clinical side of things. Yeah. Whereas my area is more focused on the performance enhancement side. So by just answering these questions, I can get a sense of if they really need me, or is it in their best interest for me to direct them to someone who can help them with their needs more.
Yeah, that's great. And like you said before, to quote the great Michael Scott again, keep it simple, stupid, right? So, yeah, that's awesome. So, just in terms of how the business has grown since you started back in 2019, just how much growth have you seen in the business?
Well, given that I'm still in school, I'm trying to maybe hold myself back a bit and not try to grow too much, because I got to keep my academics in mind, because I am still a full-time master's student. But I think it's just, again, having the podcast has just been a good opportunity to create a platform for myself. So in that way, when I'm ready to begin to really scale my business and to get clients, I'm going to have an easier transition to do that, opposed to if I were not created this platform. So I think it's just really kind of gotten ready for me in that way. But again, having this platform has just been a great opportunity for me to connect with different athletes to work with them, and I can just run maybe a smaller practice right now, gain some experience while I'm finishing my school, and continue to grow it. And then that way, when I'm ready to really scale, I'll have a better shot at doing so.
Just talking about you still being a full-time student and just doing this podcast, the Mental Dive podcast, as well with mental performance coaching, just in terms of just time management, how you found it has that been along the way?
Time management is definitely really important. I've tried to get better at it myself. Usually, instead of leaving things up to chance and knowing that I have to do a certain amount of things, I'll usually just schedule it in my calendar. So let's say I have a day off. I've structured my day. So I'm like, okay, from let's say 10 to 11, I'm going to work on this assignment. From 11 to 11:30, I'm working on this. And it just kind of helps remind me of what matters and where my priorities are, which helps me a lot. Because I think it can be overwhelming at times when we are on the go and we're trying to do too much, and we don't know exactly where we should start or what our priorities are. So just by kind of scheduling it in, it gives you some structure, and then from there, it should help with productivity. So time management is definitely important when juggling many things.
Yeah, for sure. All about keeping those priorities at the top of your list of what you want to achieve, for sure. Last question before I let you go, because I think that what you're doing with mental performance coaching is a great tool to help kids get the best out of, or just anybody in general get the most out of their mental performance out there in sports. Just in terms of, if, say, I wanted to sign up for mental performance coaching, just what would the price range be for me to do that if I were to sign up for one-on-one sessions?
Yeah, totally. So right now my rates, I usually run them in half-hour sessions just because I feel like they're usually more productive in half hours. So for a half-hour session, they currently run at $43. And then for hour sessions it would just be 86, which I believe is pretty reasonable, just given the fact that it doesn't just account for the time that I'm spending with the athlete one-on-one. It also accounts for the time that I spend preparing for sessions. It also spends for the time where I might do confidential peer consultation to help work with other consultants to work through certain problems. So right now it would be 43 Canadian per half hour.
Well, that's great. Definitely, like you said, when you take into account just how you prepare for the sessions and just all the stuff that comes with it, that's a pretty reasonable price, I'd say. And for any athletes out there that want to better their mental performance, just maybe try out Taylor Staden's mental performance coaching. Taylor, it's been a blast having you on the show for this week's edition of the Prospect Show. Thank you so much for joining me, and maybe we'll stay in touch and have you on again at some point.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. I appreciate it. Happy to come on anytime.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.